It all started innocently enough, or so I thought. My name is Daniel and I'm 44. I run a boutique distillery in the heart of the city. It's my pride and joy, a business I built from the ground up, with long nights, blistered hands, and a stubborn belief that passion beats profit margins. About 7 years ago, I met Lisa, a sharp-minded accountant I'd hired to help untangle the financial mess of my fledgling business. She was meticulous, efficient, and had a dry wit that cut through my stress like a double shot of espresso. Our relationship began with spreadsheets and late-night tax filings, slowly morphing into shared dinners, deep conversations, and long drives through the city. She had a son, Tyler, who was 12 at the time, a quiet kid with a knack for tech and a love for retro video games. I never had kids of my own, and the idea of stepping into a ready-made family was both exciting and nerve-wracking. But Lisa had a warmth about her that pulled me in, and Tyler seemed like a decent kid. After about a year of dating, we moved in together. I traded my quiet loft for a chaotic, toy-strewn house, complete with snack wrappers under the couch and Wi-Fi passwords scribbled on sticky notes. I embraced the role of stepdad with open arms. I bought Tyler his first gaming PC, helped him set up a streaming channel, and even coached his little league team for a season. I tried to be the role model I wished I had growing up, present, supportive, and financially stable. Things were good for a while, really good. But the cracks in our blended family started to show as Tyler hit his teenage years. I noticed small things at first, the way he'd roll his eyes when I asked about his day, or how he'd only refer to me as Daniel instead of Dad, despite all the effort I put in. I brushed it off, chalking it up to typical teenage angst. After all, he had his real dad Mark in the picture, though from what I'd heard Mark was a classic screw-up. The type who'd flake on birthdays, forget child support payments, and show up unannounced, reeking of bad decisions and worse whiskey. Lisa assured me it was important for Tyler to keep a connection with his biological dad, despite their rocky past. He's still his father, she'd say, her eyes flicking down to her wine glass whenever I brought it up. He needs that relationship. I bit my tongue even when Tyler would come back from those weekends with a new chip on his shoulder, colder, a little more distant. Then came Tyler's 18th birthday, the milestone moment I thought would finally cement our bond. I decided to throw him a party at my distillery, a sleek industrial space with exposed brick and custom whiskey barrels lining the walls. I knew it was a bit over the top for a teenager, but I wanted to make the night unforgettable for him. I even shelled out for a custom cake shaped like his favourite gaming console and rented out a live DJ to keep the energy high. As we were setting up, I pulled Tyler aside. "Hey man, this is your night. Make it count." He nodded, barely making eye contact, his thumbs already flicking across his phone. I brushed it off. Teenagers, right? The night of the party, the place was packed. Tyler's friends streamed in wide-eyed at the space, instantly pulling out their phones to post to their feeds. I caught snippets of their conversations, most of them in awe of the setup. Tyler, in his designer jacket I'd bought him as a gift, looked every bit the confident young man I'd hoped he'd become. For a moment I thought maybe I'd done something right. Then halfway through the party, I saw him. Mark. Stumbling through the front door, already halfway to drunk, his leather jacket hanging awkwardly off one shoulder, eyes glassy with that too familiar glaze. He zeroed in on Tyler, arms outstretched. "Tyler, my boy," he slurred, his voice cutting through the pulsing bass of the DJ's set. Tyler froze for a moment, then plastered on a nervous smile as his friends turned to watch. Mark clapped him on the back, leaning in too close, the stench of cheap bourbon mixing with the smell of high-end cologne in the air. I watched from the bar, my fists clenching under the counter. Before I could intervene, Mark grabbed the mic from the DJ and staggered to the centre of the room. "Everyone raise your glasses to my son, the man of the hour, 18 today. A real chip off the old block." The room fell silent, the awkward kind that makes every second stretch into eternity. I glanced at Lisa, her face pale eyes fixed on her drink fingers wrapped tight around the stem of her glass. She said nothing, just stared at the floor as if willing it to swallow her whole. I felt my blood pressure spike, my pulse pounding in my ears. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but it felt like I was the only one who saw the disaster unfolding. I watched as Mark staggered through a half-drunken speech about fatherhood and legacy, each slurred word chipping away at the polished image I'd tried so hard to create for this night. Then, as if the humiliation wasn't enough, Mark stumbled back toward Tyler, threw a sloppy arm around his shoulders, and leaned into the mic one last time. "Here's to my boy, my real son, not just some stand-in." The crowd gasped. My heart dropped. I felt the room tilt slightly as the weight of that line hit me like a punch to the gut. I caught Tyler's eyes for a second, but he quickly looked away, his face a mix of embarrassment and... was that guilt? I knew then that the night, this perfect night I'd planned, was ruined. And I realised something else too. I'd been trying to be a father to someone who never really saw me as one, and that hurt more than any drunken insult ever could. The night of Tyler's birthday left a bitter taste in my mouth. I spent the rest of the evening playing the gracious host, plastering on a tight-lipped smile, while Mark stumbled through the crowd, clinking glasses and spilling cheap bourbon on my polished floors. I tried to salvage what was left of the night, making sure the kids had their Instagram moments and the food kept flowing, but the damage was already done. When the last guest had finally left, I found myself standing alone in the distillery, the faint hum of the industrial freezers the only sound in the now empty space. My pulse still echoed in my ears, a low, angry thrum that matched the mess in my head. I swept a broken glass into the trash, the sharp crack of shards against metal oddly satisfying. As I locked up, I couldn't shake the image of Tyler's face, the way he had stiffened under his father's sloppy embrace, the quick flicker of embarrassment that crossed his features before he looked away. I had invested years into this kid, only to be reduced to a placeholder in my own life. Back at home, the house was dark and quiet, save for the faint creak of floorboards above me. I took a deep breath, letting the familiar scent of oak and old books calm my nerves. I had built this home just like I had built my distillery, brick by brick, decision by decision. I deserved respect. The next morning I found Tyler in the kitchen, still in his suit from the night before, eyes bloodshot, staring blankly at a half-empty cereal bowl. He looked up as I entered, his jaw tightening for a moment before he dropped his gaze back to his phone, scrolling mindlessly. "Morning," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Morning," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. I leaned against the counter, the cool granite pressing into my palm, grounding me. I wanted to say something, anything to bridge the chasm that had opened up between us, but the words felt pointless. If the past 6 years hadn't solidified our bond, what could a single morning conversation possibly fix? Instead, I just sipped my coffee in silence, the bitter brew matching the knot in my gut. A few days later, I overheard Tyler on a call while I was in my office. The walls in this house were thick, but not thick enough to block out the unmistakable sound of his raised voice. I paused, hand hovering over my keyboard. "Yeah, I know," Tyler snapped, his voice muffled but sharp. "No, it wasn't that great. Just a bunch of old people and cheap music. Trust me, my real dad would have thrown a way better party if he had the money." I felt a tightness in my chest, a slow, creeping burn that spread through my veins like spilled whiskey on a lit match. I had heard enough. I quietly shut my laptop and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily above me, each rotation seeming to mock my efforts. That night, as I lay in bed beside Lisa, her back turned to me, I found myself replaying the past few years in my head. Every late-night pickup from parties, every father-son talk, every dollar I'd shelled out to keep Tyler in the latest sneakers and gaming gear. Had it all been for nothing? I felt the bed shift as Lisa stirred her breath, catching for a moment, before settling back into the steady rhythm of sleep. I wanted to shake her awake, to demand answers, to ask why she never defended me, why she let Mark crash Tyler's party without so much as a whispered warning. But the fear of what her silence might truly mean kept me frozen. Instead, I stared at the darkened ceiling, the shadows stretching and contorting like the doubts that now twisted through my mind. The final straw came a week later. I had just wrapped up a long day at the distillery, my shirt still carrying the faint scent of oak barrels and smoked whiskey, when I walked into the living room to find Tyler sprawled across the couch, his feet up on the coffee table, a game controller in hand. The room was a mess, empty soda cans, crumpled chip bags, a half-eaten slice of cold pizza balanced precariously on the edge of the armrest. I clenched my jaw, swallowing the anger that threatened to rise. I had been the one to buy him that console, the one to teach him how to connect the surround sound system he now blared without a second thought for anyone else in the house. "Hey, can you at least pick up after yourself?" I said, my voice a bit sharper than I intended. He barely glanced up, his fingers still dancing across the controller. "Yeah, sure," he mumbled, not even bothering to mute his game. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. "I'm serious, Tyler. This isn't a dorm. Show some respect for the house." That did it. He dropped the controller with an exaggerated sigh, finally looking up at me with that same distant, dismissive glare. "Why do you care so much? It's just a house," he shot back, his tone dripping with the kind of teenage disdain that had become all too familiar lately. "Just a house," I repeated, my voice rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. "This house, this distillery, this life, it's all because of the sacrifices I've made. The long nights, the missed vacations, the years of building something from nothing." He snorted, shaking his head as if I had just told him the sky was green. "Whatever, man. My real dad would have given me way more freedom. At least he knows how to have a good time." I stood there, the words hitting me like a gut punch, the kind that knocks the wind out of you and leaves you gasping for air. I wanted to scream, to throw the controller across the room, to demand he show me a fraction of the respect I had spent years earning. But instead, I just turned on my heel, my shoes echoing against the hardwood floors, as I made my way to the front door, grabbing my keys off the hook. I needed air, I needed distance. I needed to remember who I was before I became this silent, sidelined figure in my own home. I spent the next few days trying to push the incident with Tyler out of my mind. I threw myself into work, losing hours in the deep, oaky warmth of my distillery. I cleaned barrels, polished brass fixtures, even scrubbed the grout between the tasting room tiles. Anything to avoid thinking about the mess my home life had become. But the nagging ache of betrayal clung to me like the lingering smoke of a charred barrel. It felt like my own house had turned on me, the walls leaning in to whisper reminders of every sacrifice I'd made, every silent dinner, every missed soccer game. I had given Tyler more than his biological father ever had, yet I was still the outsider, the placeholder. One night I came home to find Tyler on the couch again, this time with a girl I hadn't seen before. They were huddled close, laughing at something on his phone, their sneakers propped up on my coffee table. The same one I had spent a small fortune on because Lisa had wanted a statement piece for our living room. Tyler glanced up as I walked in, his expression flickering for a moment before settling back into that casual indifference I had come to expect. "Hey," I said, forcing a tight smile. "Who's this?" Tyler barely paused his game, not even bothering to introduce her properly. "Oh, this is Mia. She's just hanging out." I looked at the girl, her dark eyes peering up at me from under a curtain of jet black hair. She gave a small wave, her nails painted a deep chipped black that matched the scuffed Vans on her feet. Nice to meet you, Mia, I said, trying to keep my tone friendly. Just make sure you guys clean up before you head out, all right? Tyler's eyes flicked back to his game, his fingers tapping rapidly on the controller. Yeah, we got it. I clenched my jaw, feeling that familiar heat rising in my chest. I had once dreamed of moments like this, meeting Tyler's friends, being the cool stepdad, building a connection over late-night gaming sessions and pizza deliveries. But the reality was far less picturesque. I retreated to my office, closing the door behind me. I tried to focus on the invoices stacked on my desk, the upcoming orders, the endless spreadsheets. But my mind kept wandering back to the girl on my couch, the way Tyler had dismissed me with a wave of his hand, as if I were the intruder in my own home. That weekend, things came to a head. Lisa had insisted on a family dinner, hoping I assumed to patch things up between me and Tyler. She had spent hours in the kitchen, the rich smell of garlic and rosemary wafting through the house, mixing with the low hum of jazz from the Bluetooth speakers she had set up. I had hoped foolishly that this dinner might be the reset we needed, that maybe we could find our way back to the family I thought we were building. The table was set, the candles lit, the wine poured. Tyler slouched into his seat, his phone already in his hand, thumb scrolling rapidly as he muttered a half-hearted, "Hey," in my direction. We ate mostly in silence, the clinking of silverware and the occasional burst of laughter from Tyler's phone, the only sounds breaking the tension. I tried to engage him, asking about his classes, his friends, even his plans for college. But each question was met with a series of grunts and one-word answers. Finally, I set my fork down, the clink of metal against porcelain sharper than I intended. "All right," I said, my voice a little too loud in the quiet room. "I think we need to talk." Tyler looked up, his expression shifting from disinterest to mild annoyance. Lisa glanced nervously between us, her hand tightening around the stem of her wineglass. About what Tyler asked, his tone challenging like a boxer sizing up his opponent before the first bell. "About respect," I said, leaning forward, my palms flat against the cool surface of the table. "About what it means to be a part of this family," Tyler snorted, setting his phone down with an exaggerated sigh. "Oh, here we go," he muttered, rolling his eyes. Lisa shot him a warning look, but he ignored it. His gaze locked on me. "I've been trying, Tyler," I continued, my voice steady but firm. "I've been trying to be a good stepfather. I've put in the time, the effort, the money. I've been there for you when your real father hasn't. I've tried to support you, guide you, give you the kind of stability I never had." Tyler leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest, his jaw set in that stubborn way only teenagers can manage. And he said, his tone dripping with defiance, "What do you want, a medal?" I felt something snap inside me, a tight, brittle thread that had been stretched too thin for too long. "No, I don't want a medal," I shot back, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "I want respect. I want acknowledgement. I want to stop being treated like some outsider in my own damn house." Tyler's eyes flashed with something, anger maybe, or just teenage rebellion. "You're not my dad," he said, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "You never will be. You're just the guy my mum married." The room fell into a thick, suffocating silence. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, each beat a painful reminder of how far we had drifted. Lisa opened her mouth to say something, but the words seemed to stick in her throat, her eyes darting between us, wide and uncertain. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor with a sharp grating sound. I stood there for a moment, my fists clenched, my jaw tight, my pulse roaring in my ears. "Fine," I said, my voice low and tight. "If that's how you feel, maybe it's time you start acting like a man and figure out what respect really means." I turned on my heel, my footsteps echoing down the hall as I walked away, my shadow stretching long and distorted against the wall. As I reached my office, I heard the faint clink of glass as Lisa set her wine down, followed by the soft, muffled sounds of Tyler's footsteps as he stomped up the stairs, his door slamming shut a moment later. I closed my office door, leaning back against the cool, polished wood, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. I had crossed a line, maybe burned a bridge, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Something had shifted that night, something fundamental, and there was no going back. The days that followed felt like walking through a minefield. Every creak of the floorboards, every slammed door, every tight-lipped glance across the dinner table felt like a reminder of the night I had finally spoken my mind. Tyler avoided me, like the plague, slipping in and out of the house, with his hood pulled up, headphones clamped tightly over his ears, his entire body radiating a silent, simmering rage. Lisa, for her part, had retreated into a shell of polite, strained small talk, her attempts at normalcy doing little to hide the tension that clung to every corner of our house. I found myself avoiding the living room altogether, choosing instead to spend my nights in the distillery, the rhythmic clink of glass and the warm, heady aroma of aging barrels, a welcome contrast to the cold, stony silence that awaited me at home. One Friday evening, as I polished the copper stills in the back of the distillery, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out, squinting at the screen. It was Lisa, her name glowing against the dark backdrop like a warning light. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the green call button before finally swiping to answer. "Hey," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "Daniel," she said, her tone clipped and tight. "We need to talk." I felt my stomach tighten, a cold, coiled dread settling in my chest. About what? About Tyler, she replied, her voice sharper now, each word carefully enunciated as if she were trying to keep from exploding. About this whole situation. I sighed, leaning back against the polished copper, the cool metal pressing into my shoulder blades. "All right," I said, trying to keep my own tone neutral. "What's going on?" There was a long pause, the kind that stretches out into uncomfortable territory, each second a slow drip of impending disaster. "Tyler got accepted into his top-choice college," she said finally, her words tumbling out in a rush. "NYU. He got the acceptance letter today." I blinked, the information taking a moment to sink in. NYU, not exactly a cheap choice. "That's great," I managed, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. "Yeah," Lisa continued, her voice tight. "But he's worried about the tuition. He was hoping you might, help out." I closed my eyes, the polished surface of the copper still suddenly feeling too cold against my back. I had spent the better part of a decade investing in Tyler, not just financially, but emotionally. I had given him my time, my patience, my guidance, and yet I was still the outsider, the unwanted third wheel in his carefully curated life. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Lisa, we need to have a serious conversation about this, about what's fair, about what I'm willing to do and what I'm not." There was another long, pregnant pause, the static crackle of the connection humming in my ear. "Daniel," she said finally, her voice lower now, almost a whisper, "please don't do this. He's just a kid. He's still figuring things out. Don't punish him because of a few rough patches." I felt a sharp, bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, but I swallowed it down, clenching my jaw until my teeth ached. "A few rough patches," I repeated, my voice tight. "Lisa, this isn't just about a few rough patches. This is about respect, about boundaries. About the fact that I have been the one supporting him, guiding him, trying to be a father figure, while his real dad waltzes in and out of his life without consequence." She sighed, the sound crackling through the phone like a weak radio signal. "I know it's been tough, but he's still our son. He's still family." I felt my pulse quicken, a low, angry thrum that echoed in my ears. "Is he—" I shot back, my voice sharper now, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Because he's made it pretty damn clear that I'm just the guy his mom married. That I'm nobody. That I'm nothing to him." Silence, thick, heavy, suffocating. Finally, Lisa spoke, her voice tight and strained. "Daniel, you can't just turn your back on him now. Not when he needs you the most." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose, trying to stave off the pounding headache building behind my temples. "I'm not turning my back on him," I said, my voice low and controlled. "I'm just done being taken for granted. Another long silence, each second stretching out like a taut wire ready to snap. "Fine," Lisa said finally, her voice cold sharp, each word a carefully aimed dagger. "But don't come crying to me when you realise what you've lost." The line went dead, the soft, disconnected tone ringing in my ear like a final, echoing judgment. I stood there for a long moment, the phone still clutched in my hand, the copper still cool against my back. The low hum of the distillery's refrigeration units, the only sound in the empty room. I felt a strange, detached calm wash over me, the kind that comes when you finally accept that something you've been clinging to is already gone. I set my phone down on the polished surface of the counter, my reflection staring back at me, eyes hollow jaw, tight, the overhead lights casting sharp, unforgiving shadows across my face. It was time to start looking out for myself. The days that followed felt like walking on glass every step, a calculated risk, every glance a potential trigger. Tyler continued to avoid me slipping in and out of the house like a ghost, while Lisa's silence had taken on a sharp, brittle edge, the kind that snaps without warning. I tried to focus on the distillery, pouring my frustration into late-night cleaning sessions and aggressive inventory counts, but the weight of our unresolved issues followed me everywhere, clinging like the smoky residue of charred oak. Then one evening, as I sat in my office going over a particularly grim quarterly report, I heard the front door slam. I paused, the pen in my hand hovering over the paper, my pulse quickening. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one sharp and deliberate, growing louder until they stopped just outside my door. The door swung open and Tyler stood there, his jaw clenched, eyes hard, a crumpled piece of paper clutched in his fist. "We need to talk," he said, his voice tight, each word a barely controlled burst of anger. I set my pen down, leaning back in my chair, my eyes locking onto his. "All right," I said, forcing my tone to stay calm. "What's this about?" He took a step into the room, tossing the crumpled paper onto my desk. It skidded across the polished wood, coming to rest just inches from my hand. I frowned, unfolding it slowly, my eyes scanning the familiar logo at the top, NYU's Financial Aid Office. "Tyler, what is this?" I asked, my voice wary, my heart already sinking. He crossed his arms, his jaw still tight, a muscle ticking just beneath his left cheek. "It's my tuition statement," he snapped, his tone dripping with accusation. "It's due in 2 weeks and I need you to pay it." I stared at the paper, my eyes tracing the long list of fees, the staggering total at the bottom. I felt my stomach twist, a slow, sickening churn that sent a bitter taste creeping up the back of my throat. "Tyler," I said, setting the paper down, my fingers still tingling from the tight grip. "We need to talk about this." He rolled his eyes, leaning back against the doorframe, his arms still crossed his posture, radiating defiance. "What's there to talk about? You're my stepdad. You've been paying for everything else. Why stop now?" I felt my temper flare, a sharp, sudden heat that burned away the last of my patience. I stood up my chair, scraping against the hardwood floor with a sharp, grating sound. "Why stop now?" I repeated, my voice rising, despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "Tyler, I have been paying for everything. Your clothes, your gadgets, your gaming setups, your parties. I've been here day in and day out, trying to support you, guide you, be a father figure when your real dad couldn't be bothered." He scoffed, his eyes narrowing, his lip curling into a sneer. "Oh, here we go." He shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The poor me speech. I get it. You think you're some kind of martyr because you married my mom and took on the big bad responsibility of being a stepdad." I felt my fists clench at my sides, my pulse thundering in my ears, each beat a reminder of every unappreciated sacrifice, every silent, overlooked effort. "Martyr." I shot back, my voice sharp, each word a deliberate, precise cut. "You have no idea what I've given up for this family. The late nights, the missed opportunities, the endless compromises. And for what? So you can treat me like an ATM with a pulse." Tyler's eyes flashed, his jaw tightening, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me, the tension between us crackling like a live wire. "You know what?" he spat, his voice shaking with barely restrained fury. "You're right. You're not my dad. You never will be. My real dad might not have his life together, but at least he never pretended to be something he's not." I felt the words hit me like a physical blow, each one driving the air from my lungs, my pulse spiking, my vision blurring around the edges. I opened my mouth to respond, to throw the full weight of my anger back at him, but the words caught in my throat, a jagged, choking lump of betrayal and heartbreak. Instead, I took a slow, deliberate breath, my jaw tightening, my fingers flexing at my sides. I forced myself to meet his gaze, my eyes locking onto his, refusing to look away. "Fine," I said, my voice low and tight, each word a carefully aimed strike. "You don't want me in your life. You don't want my support. You don't want my guidance." "Fine, but that also means you don't get my money." Tyler's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise breaking through his mask of teenage defiance. What are you talking about?" He stammered, his voice suddenly smaller, the bravado slipping, the edges fraying. "I'm done," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, the weight of years of resentment finally breaking free. "I'm done being your punching bag. I'm done being your fallback plan. I'm done being your backup parent. If you want to figure out what being a man really means, then you can start by taking responsibility for your own future." Tyler took a step back, his eyes wide, his chest heaving, his fists still clenched. "You can't do this," he whispered, his voice cracking, his eyes searching mine for some sign of weakness, some hint of retreat. But I felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty, a sharp-cutting clarity that cut through the years of resentment and disappointment like a blade. "Oh, I said, my voice cold and steady, "and I will." With that, I turned on my heel, my footsteps echoing down the hallway. As I walked away, my shadow stretching long and sharp against the wall each step, a deliberate final break from the life I had tried so hard to build. I didn't stop until I reached my office, the heavy door clicking shut behind me, the soft, muffled sounds of Tyler's ragged breathing, the last thing I heard before the silence closed in around me, thick and suffocating. I leaned back against the door, my heart racing, my pulse pounding in my ears, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. For the first time in years, I felt something like freedom. The days that followed were a surreal blur of quiet, uneasy calm. Tyler had taken to shutting himself in his room, the muffled thump of bass-heavy music his only communication. Lisa, on the other hand, had gone ice cold, her interactions with me reduced to brief, brittle exchanges about groceries and bills. It felt like I was living with strangers' ghosts, haunting the shell of what I once thought was my family. I came home one evening to find the house in chaos. Boxes were piled high in the living room, stacks of clothes spilling out onto the hardwood floor, the sharp smell of cardboard and packing tape hanging heavy in the air. Lisa stood in the centre of the mess, her back to me, shoving handfuls of folded clothes into an open suitcase, her shoulders tense, her movements sharp and angry. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She froze for a moment, her hand hovering over a stack of neatly folded jeans, before slowly turning to face me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her jaw tight, her cheeks flushed with the kind of anger that runs deep, sharp and bitter. "We're leaving," she said, each word clipped final like the slam of a cell door. I felt my stomach drop, a cold, hollow ache spreading through my chest. I took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Leaving," I repeated, my voice low and tight. "What do you mean, leaving?" She straightened her eyes hard, her chin tilted at a defiant angle. "Tyler and I are moving out. We'll stay with my sister for a while, figure things out." I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, but I swallowed it down, clenching my fists at my sides. "So that's it," I shot back, my voice sharp. "You're just leaving after everything." She crossed her arms over her chest, her gaze unwavering, her jaw set in that stubborn way I had come to know too well. "You left us first," she said, her voice steady, each word a carefully aimed blade. "The moment you turned your back on Tyler, you left us." I felt my pulse quicken, a hot, angry flush creeping up my neck. I didn't turn my back on him. I shot back my voice, rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. I just stopped letting him walk all over me. I stopped being his doormat. Lisa's eyes flashed, her jaw tightening, her fists clenching at her sides. "You stopped being his father," she snapped, her voice shaking with barely restrained fury. "You gave up on him, on us." I took a step back, the words hitting me like a physical blow sharp and cutting, each one driving the air from my lungs. I felt my pulse spike, my vision blurring around the edges, my chest tight, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. For a long moment we just stood there, the silence between us, thick and suffocating, the distant thump of Tyler's music, the only sound breaking the tension. Finally, I took a slow, deliberate breath, my jaw tightening, my fists still clenched at my sides. "Fine," I said, my voice low and cold, each word a carefully aimed strike. "If that's how you feel, then go. But don't come back here looking for my support when things get tough. I'm done being your safety net." Lisa's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening, her chest heaving with each shallow breath. "Don't worry," she spat, her voice sharp, bitter, each word dripping with venom. "We don't need you. We never did." With that, she turned back to the open suitcase, her hands moving quickly, shoving clothes into the overflowing pile, her shoulders tight, her movements sharp and angry. I took a step back, my pulse thundering in my ears, my jaw tight, my fists still clenched at my sides. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, each beat a painful, bitter reminder of every unappreciated sacrifice, every silent, overlooked effort. Without another word, I turned on my heel, my footsteps echoing down the hallway. As I walked away, my shadow stretching long and sharp against the wall, each step a deliberate final break from the life I had tried so hard to build. I didn't stop until I reached my office, the heavy door clicking shut behind me, the soft, muffled sounds of Lisa's furious packing the last thing I heard before the silence closed in around me, thick and suffocating. I leaned back against the door, my heart racing, my pulse pounding in my ears, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. For the first time in years, I felt something like freedom. 3 weeks later, the house felt bigger, emptier, each room a hollow echo of the life I had tried so hard to build. The piles of laundry were gone, the constant thump of Tyler's music a distant memory. The lingering scent of Lisa's perfume finally faded from the air. I had spent those weeks in a kind of daze, moving through the house like a ghost, the quiet oppressive, the silence deafening. Then one morning, as I stood in the kitchen sipping my coffee, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, squinting at the unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the green call button before finally swiping to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice rough, my throat dry. There was a brief pause, a crackle of static, and then a familiar shaky voice crackled through the line. "Hey, Tyler," said, his voice small, uncertain, the bravado gone, the defiance stripped away, leaving only a scared, uncertain teenager. I felt my heart clench, a sharp, painful twist that sent a bitter taste creeping up the back of my throat. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the cool marble of the kitchen counter, my pulse thundering in my ears. "Tyler," I said, my voice low, steady, each word carefully measured. "What do you want?" There was another long pause, the line crackling softly each second, stretching out into uncomfortable territory. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice cracking, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I messed up. I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have taken you for granted." I felt my jaw tighten, my fists clenching at my sides, the bitter lingering sting of betrayal, still fresh, the wounds still raw. I took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing myself to stay calm, to keep my voice steady. I appreciate the apology, I said, my tone cool, controlled, each word a deliberate, careful strike. But it's going to take more than a few words to fix this. Another long silence, the line crackling softly, the faint muffled sounds of traffic in the background. Yeah, Tyler said finally, his voice small broken. I know, I just wanted you to know. And then before I could respond, the line went dead. The soft, disconnected tone ringing in my ear like a final echoing judgment. I set the phone down, my heart still racing, my pulse still thundering in my ears, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I took a slow, deliberate breath, my jaw tightening, my fists still clenched at my sides. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Story 2. My sister Elena got married last summer in San Diego, and it took me 2 hours to realize I wasn't actually invited. I was used, sure, budgeted, forgotten, but not invited. I should have noticed something was off the moment I arrived at the venue, and the check-in coordinator blinked at me. Name Adrian Castillo, I said, adjusting my collar. Brother of the bride. She smiled awkwardly and scanned the list. Her finger froze mid-scroll. Oh, you're listed as assisting vendor. I thought it was a joke, truly. I laughed. She didn't. Let's rewind. A month earlier, I got a frantic call from my mom. Elena's caterer fell through, she said, her voice full of that soft urgency she only uses when she needs something. Didn't you help with that company last year? She was referring to a catering service I helped launch for a client. I did their branding. I had contacts, not ownership, but Mum didn't care. Elena really needs this, Adrian, she added, and you're so good at fixing things. So I did. I called in favours, recruited a full crew, even chipped in $2,000 of my own when the venue tacked on late reservation fees. At the time, I told myself it was worth it. She's my sister, and I didn't want to be that guy, the one who keeps score. But it turns out I should have kept score. Because when I showed up at the reception, the seating chart listed Table 12, family friends, Table 13, groom's cousins, Table 14, overflow guests. My name wasn't there. Not anywhere. Not even in the overflow. Instead, I got handed a laminated badge, vendor support meal provided upon request. I stared at it numb. The worst part, my sister saw me and didn't even flinch. She gave me a one-armed hug, the kind you give someone you haven't seen in years and don't plan to invite to your next birthday. Thanks again for helping out, she whispered. We really needed someone reliable. Then she walked away. Not, hey, where are you sitting? Not so glad you're here. Just thanks for helping. I found a spot at the far end of the lawn with the waitstaff. One of the guys offered me a water bottle. You with us? He asked, glancing at my badge. I stared at it. I guess I am now. I didn't eat. I didn't dance. I watched. I watched as my parents toasted Elena and said things like, she's always been the heart of the family. I watched as the groom's brother gave a speech where he thanked everyone in the bridal party, including the florist, and forgot to mention the person who made sure the entire catering team showed up on time and under budget. Me. I finally slipped away around dessert, went out to the parking lot, sat in my car, and just stared at the wheel. For a moment I thought maybe I did something to deserve this. Maybe I wasn't close enough to Eleanor anymore. Maybe she just forgot. But forgetting isn't innocent when it costs you thousands of dollars and a seat at the table. It's targeted. Intentional. So I drove home. And then I logged into my payment app. $2,000 to the venue, $375 for linen rentals, or $125 tip pool I wasn't reimbursed for. I reversed every pending transfer I could. Then I logged into the business portal I'd used to coordinate the service crew and changed the billing information back to my sister's name. Then I drafted an invoice, itemized, professional, cold. The subject line read, Event Support Invoice, Elena Castillo Wedding. I sent it to her, CC'd the groom, blind CC'd our parents. I didn't get a thank you. But I did get a text from my mom. Adrian, what are you doing? This isn't how family behaves. I stared at it for a while. Then I wrote back. I was behaving like family when I paid for the damn wedding. Y'all were the ones treating me like the help. The replies came fast after that. Elena's text. You made this about you, typical. Dad's call. Son, this is not the time for drama, but there's never a good time to defend your own dignity. So I didn't respond. I just left the invoice sitting there unpaid. Let it sting. It's wild. You grow up thinking family's supposed to be unconditional, but what they really meant was we'll love you as long as you play your role. Mine. Support crew, background character, human wallet. Until I quit the cast. That night I poured myself a drink, opened a fresh notebook and scribbled something on the first page. From now on, if I'm not on the guest list, I'm not footing the bill. I tore out the page, stuck it on the fridge. That was the last favour I did for anyone who couldn't remember to save me a seat. The week after Eleanor's wedding was the quietest I'd ever heard from my family. Not peaceful quiet, more like don't poke the bear quiet. No calls, no texts, no group chats, not even the usual recycled memes in the Castillo Cousins thread, just complete silence, which in my family is code for we're plotting something behind your back. Then came Sunday dinner, a weekly ritual at my parents' house. Roasted chicken, passive-aggressive comments, and a rotating list of reasons why someone wasn't good enough for my sister. I showed up late on purpose. As soon as I stepped through the door, I felt the air shift. My mum greeted me with a tight-lipped smile. Dad barely looked up from his beer. Elena wasn't there, of course. Too emotionally drained, I assumed. Only my younger brother Luis dared to break the tension. He gave me a low fist bump. Still wild how they gave you a staff badge. Still wild how I paid for the linens, I muttered. He snorted and went back to his phone. Dinner was stiff. Polite, controlled, the kind of politeness that tastes like undercooked beef and unresolved tension. Halfway through, my mum cleared her throat. So she said like she was choosing her words with tweezers about the email you sent. Here we go. I think you're making this a bigger deal than it is. Dad nodded mouthful. You were part of the planning. It's not like we left you out. I was never told I wasn't a guest, I said. But I wasn't treated like one. You sat with the staff, Mom replied flatly. That was just a mix-up. I raised an eyebrow. A mix-up that came with a vendor badge. She didn't answer. Just folded her napkin in half like it might shut me up. Then Dad leaned in. Adrian, you've always been the solid one. Elena's wedding was stressful. You could have just let this go. There it was. That phrase again. You're the solid one. The peacemaker, the reliable sibling, the one who's expected to take the hits and smile through it. I set my fork down. Do you know how many family events I've helped pay for? My mom rolled her eyes. Here we go. No, really, I said. Let's count. Luis's graduation party, I covered the tent rental. Christmas, 2 years ago, half the Airbnb. Dad's surprise retirement barbecue, I booked the DJ, and nobody said a word, not even a thank you. You did those things because you wanted to, Dad said. No, I said. I did them because nobody else would. Because you all assumed I'd take care of it. Mom took a sip of wine. Well, you're doing well, aren't you? That's not the point. She looked confused, or pretended to be. But Dad wasn't confused. He just shook his head. You sound bitter, son. I laughed. That's because I am. Luis kept his head down, but I saw the corners of his mouth twitch. He got it. He always got it. He was the only one who ever asked how I was doing during late-night parties or picked up extra chairs when everyone else disappeared. After dinner, he followed me out to my car. They're going to spin this into you being emotional, he said quietly. You know that, right? Let them, I replied. They've been spinning my whole life. I'm just finally calling it out. He nodded once. You're not wrong, he said. They just don't like when the background character takes the mic. The next day, the group chat came alive. Cousin Clara. Hey, just a heads up, Elena's saying you caused a scene at the wedding. Uncle Raoul. Not cool, Adrian. She's your sister. Even my godmother jumped in. You know your sister's sensitive. You could have just waited. Waited for what? To be invisible in a nicer font. That same night, I got a voicemail from Elena. It started polite. Adrian, I really wish you hadn't done this. Then came the guilt. I didn't mean for you to feel excluded, but it was my wedding, not yours. And finally the dig. You've always been a little dramatic. I thought you'd outgrown that. I deleted it before she could finish. Then I wrote her an email. Short, direct, no heat. Elena, I'm not making this about me. You made me a vendor and pretended I was family. I won't be your overdraft account anymore. We're done. I hit send. Then blocked her number. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail from the venue. Apparently, they were reprocessing vendor payments due to a discrepancy in guest listings and taxable service classifications. Translation: my assistance with the wedding had triggered a review of how Elena's wedding was billed, and it wasn't looking great. The irony: my invoice had protected me legally. Eleanor's fake gifted services label, not so much. By Friday, I got a call from a mutual friend who worked at the venue. You might want to know, she said, your sister tried to claim your help as an in-kind donation for the planner's fee. The venue flagged it. I didn't say much. But inside, I smiled. Because when you're treated like a transaction, eventually someone checks the receipt. Over the next week, my parents sent a string of increasingly frustrated messages. You're embarrassing us. Elena's going through enough. This isn't what Grandpa would have wanted. They tried every tactic. Shame, guilt, emotional blackmail. But I'd gone quiet. Not silent quiet. The kind of quiet that means you can't guilt me anymore. Then came the knock. Sunday morning, 9:14 a.m. I opened the door and found my dad standing there. No grand speech, just, we need to talk. So we did. At my kitchen table with cold coffee between us. He looked older than I remembered. More tired, less sharp. You're really cutting us off, he asked. I'm setting a boundary. You're blowing up the family over a party. I shook my head. No, I'm just refusing to fund a narrative where I'm the background help. He rubbed his face. You've changed. I've just stopped playing dumb. He didn't apologize. But he didn't yell either. He stood up, looked around my apartment and said, You've done well for yourself. Then left. That was the closest thing to respect I'd ever gotten from him. That night, Louise texted me. They're pissed, but they're shook too. I think they finally believe you're serious. I replied with a photo of the laminated vendor badge. Proof of concept, I wasn't planning to go viral. All I did was post a single photo. Just the vendor badge from Elena's wedding, taped to my fridge with the caption, When you sponsor half the reception, but get seated behind the staff buffet. No names, no tags, no hashtags. Just honesty. It was up for 12 hours before it hit 15,000 likes. By the time I woke up, I had DMs from strangers saying things like, You're the cousin I was at my sister's wedding. I felt this in my soul. This is why I eloped. And then the twist, someone on TikTok screenshotted it and made a voiceover slideshow called When the Quiet One Has Receipts. It blew up. Suddenly I wasn't just Adrian, the responsible sibling. I was a stand-in for every family's invisible backbone. And Eleanor, she didn't like that one bit. I knew it reached her when I got a text from an unknown number. You're humiliating us publicly. This isn't over. No name, but the energy classic Elena. Then came the message from her husband Brandon. Hey man, just trying to stay neutral here. Can we talk? I didn't reply. Not because I was mad, but because I didn't trust him. People who stay neutral during betrayal aren't neutral. They're complicit. Later that week, Luis called me. Something's up, he said. Elena's freaking out. About the wedding, I asked. No, about the accountant. Apparently the venue had filed a formal inquiry with the event coordinator and Elena's payment disclosures. They flagged a discrepancy between the reported sponsorships and the actual payment trail, namely me. Turns out when you list someone's services as donated but that someone submits an invoice, it becomes a legal grey area. Eleanor's attempt to write off portions of the wedding as gifted professional support had now triggered a tax review. And the worst part, she'd dragged Brandon's business into the paperwork too. They shared a joint filing. Now the IRS was asking questions. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reality finally catching up. One night I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Adrian, the voice said. It was soft, nervous, almost whispering. This is Taylor. I'm Brandon's sister. I paused. Okay. I wanted to say I saw your post, and I'm not surprised. Elena's been like this for years. She told me stories. Family trips where Elena stole Taylor's clothes and blamed her. High school drama where she spread rumours to stay the centre of attention. Financial favours she never repaid. I cut her off last year, Taylor said, and now she tells everyone I'm mentally unstable. I swallowed. That sounds familiar? I just wanted you to know, she continued, you're not crazy. She's really good at making people feel like the problem for noticing the pattern. That night I sat with that sentence. She's really good at making people feel like the problem for noticing the pattern. It echoed through my apartment, because that's exactly what this was. Not one insult, not one party, not one wedding. A pattern of being useful until I had needs of my own. of being dependable until I stopped saying yes, of being the solid one until I had something to protect. The following Sunday, I got a call from Grandma Rosa. Now let me be clear, Rosa is a legend in our family. Sharp as glass, says little, misses nothing. She once roasted an uncle at Christmas dinner so quietly he didn't realise he'd been insulted until dessert. So when I saw her name on the screen, I answered fast. Adrian, she said, how are you holding up? I blinked. I'm okay. I've seen the videos, she said, and I've heard the gossip. You're not wrong. I waited for a but. It never came. I gave Elena the benefit of the doubt for years, she said. That ends now. Pause. You've been carrying too much for too long. That's not your job. I swallowed. Thank you. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. I'm changing the will. I sat up. What? I used to think spreading the assets evenly was fair, but now I know fair isn't always equal. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. She just said, keep doing what you're doing. Quiet truth shakes the loudest liars. The next morning, I received an email from Elena. Subject, let's put this behind us. It read, you've made your point. Congrats. I'm sure you feel powerful now. But you're hurting the family, and you need to stop before things get worse. I won't apologise for being stressed at my own wedding. You took it personally when it wasn't meant that way. This doesn't have to go any further. Let's be adults. Let's move on. No, sorry, no responsibility, just gaslighting wrapped in civility. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed the email, filed it next to my receipts. Then came the final twist. Brandon called me. I didn't want to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Adrian, he said, voice low, I think I'm going to need your help. I said nothing. He sighed. She forged my signature on one of the vendor contracts. Silence. She tried to use it to get out of paying a cancellation fee, but the planner called me directly and it wasn't my signature. At least not one I remember writing. My heart dropped. And I asked. She admitted it when I pressed her. I exhaled. Wow. There's more, he added. She's been redirecting mail, some bank notices. I only saw them because Taylor started asking questions. He paused. I'm filing for legal separation. I didn't cheer, didn't celebrate. Just said I'm sorry it got to this point. He sighed. Me too. But I think I needed the whole world to see her clearly before I could. It's strange how exposing the truth feels less like revenge and more like a rescue mission. You're not just freeing yourself. You're lighting the way for others who were trapped in the same illusion. A few days later, I posted one final update. A photo of my fridge. Vendor badge still taped there. Next to it, a post-it with a single quote. You weren't the villain. You were the alarm clock. The caption, I don't need apologies, I need peace, and I finally have it. I turned off comments, then went to bed in silence. No buzzing phone, no guilt, no begging. Just peace. Real earned peace. 3 weeks after Brandon filed for separation, I got a letter from Grandma Rosa. Not an email, not a forwarded group chat link. A real handwritten letter. Ink smudged at the edges, folded twice, just like the ones she used to tuck into my lunchbox when I was a kid. It read, Adrian, I'm proud of you. Not because you won anything, but because you finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. That silence you carried for years, I heard it. I've decided to put something in motion. You'll hear about it soon, and when you do, I want you to remember, you didn't ask for this. You earned it. I set the letter down and just sat there. Not in shock, not overwhelmed, just seen. For once, not as the peacemaker, not the wallet, not the utility sibling, just me, Adrian. The next time I saw Elena was at Grandma Rosa's birthday. She walked in late as always, wearing designer sunglasses and the expression of someone who expected to be treated like royalty in exile. The family split as she passed, parting like waves around her. Nobody asked where Brandon was. Nobody dared mention the IRS audit that was quietly making its way through her mailbox. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't need to. My existence was enough. Rosa pulled me aside halfway through dinner. Told the lawyer she said I'm changing the beneficiaries. I opened my mouth, but she cut me off. No speeches, no guilt. Just this, I want my legacy to go to someone who tells the truth even when it's inconvenient. I nodded, blinking more than usual. She reached up, patted my cheek like I was still 12 and added, and you better not waste it on everyone else's fires. Let the takers burn their own bridges next time. A week later, the documents came in. I wasn't just added to the will. I was made executor of the entire estate. It was more than money, more than property. It was a message that the kid who used to take the fall now held the keys, that the optional +1 now held the master list, that I wasn't second, I was the standard. Elena called. Of course she did. She started polite. Adrian, Grandma must have told you. I just want to say whatever she's doing, I know it's not personal. Then she pivoted. I mean, it can't be. You and I, we're different people, always have been. And finally the plea. Can we at least try to fix this before the lawyers make everything official? I let her talk. Then I simply replied, I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not obligated anymore. Then I hung up. Luis stopped by my new apartment a few days later. He brought churros and a 6-pack, didn't even take off his shoes, just flopped onto the couch and handed me a bottle. You good? He asked. Yeah, I said honestly. For the first time I think I am. He popped a churro in his mouth. Whole family's weird now, he mumbled, like they're trying to figure out what happens when they can't guilt you anymore. They get quiet, I said, or louder for show. He laughed. Then he said something I'll never forget. You changed the family tree, bro. Not with fire, with boundaries. Not long after Brandon sent me a message. Divorce finalised. I'm moving out of state. Thank you for not making me feel crazy when I started seeing who she really was. I responded with one sentence. Thanks for listening before it was too late. One night I went through my old drawers and found the vendor badge again. Still laminated, still dusty. I held it for a minute, then finally tossed it. Not in anger, just release, because it didn't hold weight anymore. I didn't need it to remind me of who I used to be. I had proof of who I am now in the peace I feel walking into my apartment knowing nobody expects me to fix what they broke. I started travelling again. Italy, Portugal, small towns and strange markets and sunrises I didn't have to share with anyone. No wedding texts, no can you chip in, no guilt-laced ingratitude. Just space. And me learning that peace isn't the absence of family. It's the absence of obligation to the wrong version of it. They still talk about me. I know. Rosa tells me sometimes. She'll call and say things like, Elena's still telling people you faked the receipts. Or, your mom says she doesn't understand you anymore. To which I reply, she never tried to. Sometimes people ask me, do you regret it blowing it all up? No, because I didn't blow it up. I just stopped building the stage. They were the ones who performed. I just cut the lights. And when they ask if I'm lonely, I say this. I'd rather be alone at my own table than ignored at theirs. Because the seat they refused me, I replaced it with an entire room of my own. The other day I hosted a dinner. Just 6 friends. No big thing. Wine, home-cooked pasta, music low enough to talk over. And halfway through, one of them raised a glass and said, to Adrian, for showing us that walking away can sometimes be the most loving thing you do for yourself. Everyone clinked glasses. I sat back in my chair watching the people who had chosen me, not for what I could give, but for who I was. And I finally understood. The goal was never to get a seat at their table. The goal was to stop fighting for crumbs and build a better one, for myself, and anyone else who needed a place to feel whole again. Story 3. They used my money to throw a party I wasn't invited to. And I didn't find out until I showed up with the drinks in one hand and a gift in the other, only to be met with a glittery sign taped to the front door. No drama in 2025. Stay home, budget bro. Budget bro. I stood there dumbfounded, champagne bottles slipping in my grip, the December wind biting at my face while laughter spilled from inside. My name wasn't on the guest list, but apparently I had financed half the damn thing. Ava's voice rang out from the living room. Hey, did you put out the extra sparklers? Check with Miles, my mother called back, voice light and fake. No way, he probably forgot them, like always. Laughter. My little brother Cole chimed in next. He's probably writing another heartfelt budget plan for us. More laughter. Someone clinked a glass. Then a girl, someone I didn't recognise, snorted. That one hit harder than the cold. They didn't know I was out there, or maybe worse, they did. I crouched, set the neatly wrapped box on the doorstep and walked back to my car without knocking. The gift tag said to Ava a robotics kit she'd been asking for since September. I'd paid extra for express shipping so it would arrive before New Year's. Not that it mattered anymore. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't scream or call anyone. I just drove in silence, No music, no thoughts, just me and the growing realization that I was nothing more than an ATM in their eyes. A family-sponsored financial product with a pulse. I got home, set the champagne on the counter, and didn't even bother putting it in the fridge. I dropped my keys in the bowl and stood in the kitchen like a guest in my own space. Then I turned off my phone and slept. 12 hours, no alarms, no guilt. For once I felt nothing, and it was kind of perfect. The next morning came with noise. My phone had 27 missed calls, 39 texts, and one group voicemail that sounded like it had been recorded mid-hysteria. Liam, where the hell are you? Why would you do this? What kind of person ruins their family's party? I stopped the playback. They thought I had done something, that I had embarrassed them. They had no idea that I hadn't even stepped inside, that all I'd done was leave. And apparently that was the worst thing I could have done. But this didn't start on New Year's. No, this had been building for years, quietly, slowly, like rust on metal. You don't notice the damage until the thing snaps in your hands. It started with just a little help. A phone bill here, a car repair there, Ava's school project, Dad's dentist appointment, Cole's lost job, Mum's vacation deposit that somehow became a full flight and hotel package. I paid for all of it. Not because I was rich, I wasn't. I worked IT, paid rent on time, took care of myself. But I'd gotten used to hearing, "You're the responsible one." And somewhere along the way, responsible became available. And then obligated. And finally just invisible. The weirdest part, they stopped asking. Somewhere along the line, they just expected. I'd get PayPal requests labelled things like plus plus with no explanation. If I hesitated, there were follow-up texts, guilt, sarcasm, passive aggression dressed as humour. Mom once joked, "You should be a sponsor on our family's GoFundMe page." Cole called me our personal bailout. I always laughed, on the outside. Inside it burned. They threw the words around like jokes, but I started to feel it, that bitterness spreading. The part of me that wondered what would happen if I stopped paying, if I disappeared. One night, after helping Ava build her science fair volcano that I also paid for, I walked past the living room and overheard them. "They act like we owe them something," Cole said. "Liam's just bored," Mom added. "Single. Too much time to think." Then came Ava's voice, soft but sharp. "I think he likes feeling needed." They all laughed, like I was pathetic, like I was some sitcom side character. And I stood in the hallway holding the empty glue gun, realizing I'd been giving to people who didn't see me. They just saw what I could do for them. And yet I stayed, kept paying, kept smiling, because the alternative felt worse. Until that sign, that glitter-covered smug little sign on the door. "Stay home budget, bro." It was meant to sting, and it did. But it also woke something up in me. Because I finally saw it clearly, the way they positioned me, not as a brother, not as a son, as a joke with a debit card. And so I left the gift, left the party, and went home. Not defeated. But done. They didn't expect me to walk away. That much was obvious. Because the moment I went quiet, the group chat exploded. It started with vague confusion. Where did Liam go? Then quickly turned into fire. "Cole, dude, you seriously left? What the hell?" "Mom, Liam, this isn't funny. Come back and apologise." "Ava, I can't believe you'd ruin New Year's for us." Each message stacked like bricks around my chest. But I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen and realised something important. Not one of them asked if I was okay. Just accusations, like I committed a crime by not letting them drain me. Then the phone rang. Mom. I let it ring out. Then Dad. Then Cole. By the 5th call, I turned my phone off again. They didn't want an explanation, they wanted control. The next day, I checked the family group page. The same page where they'd once uploaded photos from family trips I'd funded but was never in. And there it was, a full-blown post from Mum. We won't name names, but some people don't know how to be part of a family. Some people let their ego get bigger than their heart. Beneath it, hundreds of comments. Her friends, old neighbours, family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. That's so awful. You guys deserve better. Must be hard carrying everyone. Hope they come to their senses. That's when it hit me they weren't just hurt. They were building a narrative. One where I was the villain, the selfish son who walked away from his loving family on New Year's Eve. And I had receipts, literal ones. Over $38,000 worth of bank statements, email threads, and PayPal transfers that told a very different story. 3 days passed. No apology, just more silence layered with guilt-soaked posts and carefully curated sob stories. Until one afternoon I opened my email. Subject, I'm sorry. From Ava. I hesitated, then clicked. Liam, I didn't write the sign. I need you to know that. I saw it on the door the night of the party and my stomach dropped. It was Mom's idea. She thought it was funny. Dad laughed. Cole said you wouldn't notice. But you did. And I don't blame you for walking away. I would have too. I know I've been part of the problem. I made jokes. I stayed quiet. I took the money. I never said thank you. But I want to now. Thank you for the robotics kit, for the school trip, for always showing up. I wish I had stood up for you sooner. Ava? I read the email twice, then again. It was small, but it was real. The first real thing I'd received from my family in years. And it came from the youngest one. The next morning I got a knock on my door. Not a loud one. A hesitant, uneven knock that told me exactly who it was before I opened it. Ava stood there. Hoodie, red eyes, no makeup, hands stuffed in her sleeves. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I nodded. She stepped inside and immediately broke down. I told them the sign was cruel, she said, crying into her hands. I told them it wasn't a joke. They just rolled their eyes. I stood still, unsure what to do. You're not crazy, she said. You're not dramatic. They use you. And when you stopped letting them, they turned on you. She looked up, mascara smeared. That's not family. I handed her tissues, sat across from her, let her talk. And for the first time, someone in that family listened to me. Ava stayed for an hour. Then she left, whispering, I'm not going back there. Not until they admit what they did. I didn't say anything. But inside, something shifted. I wasn't alone in this anymore. That night, I reopened my phone. All the unread texts, all the missed calls, and one new message from Cole. You think you're better than us now? Hope your little tantrum was worth it. I didn't reply. Instead, I uploaded a folder to a private drive. Inside a timeline of financial support from the last 5 years, every wire transfer, every invoice, every email. I titled it Proof I Was There, and I left it alone. Not for revenge, not yet, but because I knew how this family worked. They'd paint me as the problem until the paint started to crack. And then they'd come back not to say sorry, but to clean up their mess. And this time I'd be ready. Sure enough, the next day I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it back. Liam, this is James Marsh. I'm with the Financial Claims Unit from First Track Credit. We've received a dispute filed under your name regarding a family-based co-sign on a private loan. I paused. What loan? I checked my credit app. There it was. A $10,000 personal loan attached to my social security number. I never took out that loan. But someone did with me as the co-signer. I knew who. And suddenly this wasn't just emotional. This was criminal. I called Ava. Did Mom or Cole say anything about a loan? Silence. Then she exhaled sharply. Oh my God. Yes. They were talking about consolidating some debts. Said they had a plan. Said Liam won't even notice. He loves feeling helpful. My blood turned cold. They used me, I said. Ava's voice cracked. They stole from you. And now I had proof. So I made a decision. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about ending the pattern. Before they buried me under their lies, I thought they couldn't shock me anymore. But identity theft, that was a new level. They didn't just bleed me dry emotionally. Now they were signing my name on debt papers like it belonged to them. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. I made folders. One for bank records, one for email receipts, one for screenshots of every transaction I'd covered in the last 5 years. I even went through old texts, downloading each PayPal just this once request. The casual guilt trips, the birthday party invoices I'd paid, Ava's school events, Dad's medication, Mum's subscription services, Cole's car payments. I colour-coded them by family member. By the end of the night, I had 86 documents. That's when I called Jasmine, my friend from college. She worked in legal finance now. I trusted her with everything. Can you meet? I asked. I'm already clearing my afternoon, she said. The next day we met in a quiet cafe. She showed up with a binder, legal pad, no smile. I handed over a flash drive. 10 minutes later, she closed her laptop and looked at me like I'd just given her gold. "This isn't petty," she said. "This is fraud. And if you want to press charges, you've got a case, a very solid one." I didn't even blink. "Do it." She leaned forward. "You sure?" "I was raised to think protecting my family meant protecting their secrets," I said. "But all that did was destroy me slowly." She nodded. "We'll start with a formal cease and desist. Then we initiate credit fraud reporting with the loan agency, and if needed, civil restitution." "What about the family?" She shrugged. "They wanted war. You're just the first one to bring armour." The letter went out the next day. It was short, firm. Jasmine had titled it "Notice of Financial Misuse and Unauthorised Credit Activity." A few hours later, I received a group message from Mum. "What is this, a lawsuit? After everything we've done for you?" I didn't reply. A minute later, Cole texted, "You're seriously dragging your own family into court. That's sick, man." I responded with one sentence. "You used my name without permission. That's not family. That's felony." He went quiet. But the silence didn't last long. The next day they retaliated. Mom posted on Facebook again. A photo of her crying on the porch captioned, "When your own child becomes your worst enemy, pray for us." It went viral in the worst way. Pity comments poured in. "This is heartbreaking. No child should turn on their parents like that. Hope you find peace." And then Ava posted, "That photo staged. That caption, a lie. I watched them use him for years, and when he finally said no, they tried to bury him with debt." She attached a screenshot. It was a PayPal request from Mom titled "Emergency. Rent and groceries," dated a week after she'd called Liam obsessive. Then another image, a photo of Liam's name next to the loan contract. The comments turned quickly. "Wait, they stole from him. Why would you post that if you were in the wrong sounds, like he was the only one holding it all together?" Mum deleted her post an hour later. But the damage was done. Not to me, to their story. Within 3 days, Jasmine got confirmation the loan agency had flagged the account for fraud. My name was cleared. Their application was under review by investigators. They'd tried to bind me to their mess permanently, and now they were stuck with it alone. I should have felt triumphant, but I didn't. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying something on my shoulders that wasn't mine for a decade, and now it was gone. No drama, no theatrics. Just gone. The next knock at my door came from someone I didn't expect. Kelly, Cole's wife. She stood there, awkward, holding a paper bag. "I brought muffins," she said. "I know that sounds dumb." I stepped aside, waved her in. She sat down, exhaled. "He lied to me." She looked up. "I thought you were the distant one, the one who didn't want to be close. But you weren't cold. You were tired." She pulled out a file folder. "I went through our joint bank account, found transfers with your name on them. He took money from you, then told me he was working weekends." My jaw clenched. She shook her head. "I'm done covering for him. I just came to say, I see you now." She left the folder and a handwritten note. "Thank you for walking away," it read. "It gave me permission to do the same." 2 weeks later I moved. New place, clean walls, big windows, far from all of them. I changed my number, closed the family chat, blocked Cole and Mom on everything, left Dad's number on silent. Only one contact stayed unblocked, Ava. She sent me photos sometimes, of her latest project, of her robotics team, of the poetry she started writing because she wanted to use words like you do. Sometimes she wrote letters. I kept them all in a drawer, proof that not everything was a waste, proof that someone noticed. I never responded to Mum's last voicemail, but I listened to it once. "I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed." She said it like an insult, but she was right. I had changed. I stopped trying to belong in a house where I was only welcome when I paid for my spot. I stopped being the glue for a family that was fine watching me snap. I chose myself, and that's the change they'll never forgive. It's been 3 months since the last message, 3 months since I shut the door and didn't look back. 3 months since my name stopped echoing in family group chats, financial requests, or public guilt posts. And for the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. I live in a quiet neighbourhood now. No more porch signs, no champagne bottles handed back unopened, just birdsong in the morning and a kettle that whistles gently when it's ready. My apartment is small, but it's mine. No one has the key, and no one asks what's in my fridge or how much is in my account. I know now that peace isn't the loud celebration they always wanted. It's choosing to make coffee in silence without a crisis lurking in your inbox. Ava visits sometimes. We keep it casual, a movie night here, a Sunday hike there. She still brings me her little wins, her latest coding project, her robotics medal, the email from her teacher saying she's got a real future in tech. She told me the other day I didn't want to become them. And you helped me see the difference. I don't cry when she says things like that anymore. I just listen, let her have her space, let myself feel what it means to be appreciated, not because I paid, but because I showed up. A few weeks ago, I received a letter. Real paper, a stamp, the kind of thing no one sends anymore. It was from Dad. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside were 3 lines. I was raised not to ask for help. I pass that shame on to you. I'm sorry for making you carry what was mine. That was it. No pleas, no excuses, no demands for money or attention. Just a fragment of honesty I never thought I'd get. I didn't respond. Because some closure doesn't require a conversation, just acknowledgement. Then last week Mum tried to call again. Blocked number, straight to voicemail. Her message, we lost everything. You happy now? I wasn't angry. I didn't smile. I just sat there, the phone pressed to my knee, and realised something important. I didn't feel anything. Not guilt, not regret, not even relief. Just neutrality. Like her voice no longer had hooks. Like I had finally stopped bleeding for people who only felt love when it came with a receipt. I told Jasmine I didn't want to pursue further charges. The fraud case was closed, the loan had been reversed, the civil claims were dismissed in mediation. It was over. The law had done what it could. The rest that was between them and whatever reflection they could stomach. Jasmine asked me one last question. Do you want to make a public statement? I thought about it, then said no. I didn't need the world to know what happened, just the people who mattered. And Ava already did. Sometimes I get messages from strangers, people who saw Ava's post or heard about the court case. They write things like, I'm the budget bro in my family too. You inspired me to stop setting myself on fire to keep everyone warm. Thank you for reminding me that love doesn't mean debt. I never expected to be someone's example. I just didn't want to keep shrinking for people who kept asking me to disappear. Ava once asked me, do you think they'll ever change? I didn't answer right away. Then I said maybe, but that's not my job to find out. She nodded quietly. You change, she said, that's what matters. There's a framed photo on my desk now. Me and Ava sitting side by side on the edge of a small dock. She's smiling. I'm not looking at the camera, just watching the lake. On the back of the frame, she wrote, you were always there. I just had to learn how to see you. It's the only family photo I kept, because it's the only one that tells the truth. You know what the hardest part of walking away was? Not the backlash, not the loneliness, not the fear of what came next. It was realising how much of my life I'd spent performing for people who never stayed for the show. I was the opener, the technician, the clean-up crew, but never the star. They only looked at me when the lights flickered. Never when I was standing in them. But now I build my own stage. Small, quiet, real. I used to think peace was something that happened when other people changed. But peace is what happens when you change, when you stop trying to fix a system that only ever broke you. I didn't cut them off. I just stopped reaching for a lifeline that was actually a leash. And now that I've let go, I'm not falling. I'm free. Last week I ran into an old friend from high school. She blinked when she saw me. Liam, you look taller. I laughed. I think I just stopped carrying people. She smiled. It suits you. It does. Some people call what I did revenge. Some say it's selfish. Others say it's dramatic. But here's what I call it. A beginning. The one I earned. The one that doesn't ask me to apologise for finally choosing myself. The one that has nothing to do with debt guilt or glitter signs taped to doors. Just a man, standing in the quiet, breathing easy, and finally home.